Over the last 60 years, over 1,000 people have climbed to the top of Mount Everest. Hundreds of people have trekked to the North Pole. 12 people have walked on the surface of the moon. But so far, nobody's ever been to every country in the world without flying. Until now! When I was a small boy, I remember watching Around the World in 8 Days with Michael Palin. I was only about 9 or 10 at the time, and I remember thinking, why doesn't he go to every country? This is great, going to every country that he needs to go around the world without flying, but what if he went absolutely everywhere? And pretty much all my life, I've wanted to do this. And I took the idea to newspapers, I took it to television production companies and said, hey, why didn't we do this? It'd be really cool. And everyone gave me the same response. You're mad, it's impossible. You just can't do it. So, being the bloody-minded sort, I decided on the 1st of January 2009 to head off from South America, from Uruguay, and I would visit all 192 members of the United Nations, along with 8 other countries to make up a nice round total of 200. I would do it all on my own, on a shoestring budget, and without flying. So off I left. I headed through South America, up into the Caribbean. The Caribbean was remarkably difficult to get around. You'd think there were lots of fishing boats and cargo ships roaming around that would pick you up and take you to the next port. Not so. It actually took me about 2 months to get around all of the Caribbean islands. One of the most difficult Caribbean islands to get to was Cuba. And the reason being, a lot of the ships in the area were American flag vessels, and if an American goes to Cuba, they can get in trouble when they go back to America. So a lot of captains of ships said, we'd love to take you over to Cuba, but we just can't. In the end, I was in Key West. I was drunk. It was St. Patrick's Day, and all the Americans, because I've got a silly accent and red hair, they thought I was Irish, plying me with drinks. And I met a guy who wrote a book called Getting to Cuba, The Legal and Illegal Way. And he put me in touch with the captain of a small sailing boat who was heading over, at the time, to Fiji. And he was never coming back to America. And he agreed to take me on his sailing boat over to Cuba. So I managed to take off country number 34 off my list. Then I headed up to Canada. And you see here I'm crossing over the Atlantic Ocean. I went to Iceland and then down into the Netherlands, arriving at Rotterdam there on the video. And then I went to London and picked up an Interrail pass, a Eurail pass. And it cost me about 200 quid. And with that pass, over about the course of 3.5 weeks, I managed to go to literally every country in Europe. 50 countries ticked off my list. I was going to about 7 countries a day. It was wonderful. It was amazing. I got to go to all these little weird places like Liechtenstein and Vatican City and Andorra. I got to drive a train in Denmark there. I got to see the Rainbow Warrior in Finland, in Helsinki, yeah. Till farty getter like that. And then I headed over to Estonia and decided to make my way to Russia. I decided the best way to do that would be to cross over a river, because I didn't quite fancy paying £150 for a visa. I got arrested by the Estonian police on the way back into Estonia. They thought I was trying to smuggle myself out of Russia. So a bit of quick talking got me out of that situation, fortunately. Then I headed down into around the old Yugoslavian countries, 7 countries of Yugoslavia. There used to be 1. There's now a lot more countries than there used to be. If you've ever seen Animaniacs, there's a great animation of Yakko doing all the countries in the world, but it was made in the early 90s, and since then, there's been about 40 countries added to that list, all of which I had to get to. So I headed down to Tunisia. My plan was to go and visit Libya and Algeria. Now, normally, you can go to the border points, you can have a chat with the border guards, they can stamp your passport, you have a cup of tea with them, maybe they'll let you go and change some money, and then you come back. That was my plan for those 2 countries, and I turned up to the border, and they wouldn't even let me past to get out of Tunisia, interdict, put the hand up. And so basically I left those two countries and thought I'll get them later. My second attempt was to get into Africa via Morocco and Western Sahara, as you can see here. Going across the border zone wasn't so easy. I got knocked back once, had to go back to Rabat, 2,000 kilometers north of where I was, get a visa, come all the way back to get into Mauritania. Then I got on this boat over here, this is in Dakar. And this is a fisherman's boat. This is a pirogue. I paid the fisherman to take me to Cape Verde. And here's what happened.
We're well underway on our pirogue. We're in the middle of open ocean, as you can see. I saw a shark earlier. I saw a shark fin. And you can possibly see how much we're rocking about. Don't know how far we've gone or how close we are. All I know is that I'm soaking wet. I'm filthy. My face is sunburnt. My feet are sunburnt. The back of my hands are sunburnt. So this is my bed for the night. I've got what's it called? Hello. I've got a life jacket as my pillow, and I've got my sleeping bag, but my sleeping bag is soaking wet, as is my hair and all my clothes. You'll be glad to know that I haven't been sick again, and I'm keeping my cheery disposition, despite the fact that I'm absolutely shitting bricks. We're about 135 miles now from any kind of land. In the middle of the ocean, on a boat with 10 people who don't speak a word of English, and everything's made of wood. We don't have a sail, or oars, or a radio. Well, here we are. Cape Verde. Come on guys, take us in before the police come and arrest us. So now waiting for the police to get on board. Film them, we were coming. I don't want to film them because you know what coppers are like with being filmed. There's a copper and there's an army guy.
At this point, Graham's camera is confiscated.
Esta manhã no Porto da Praia, uma embarcação clandestina com 10 passageiros da costa africana e um inglês. Os imigrantes dizem que apenas acompanharam o europeu, que diz ser um aventureiro e que não pretendem ficar no país.
On n'est pas là pour vivre.
Nós não viemos para cá ficar. O inglês pediu-nos para acompanhá-lo, mas depois regressamos ao Senegal. Não viemos aqui para viver.
I hired these fishermen to come and bring me over here, and everyone said, yeah, he'll be fine.
Os 11 imigrantes já foram encaminhados à esquadra de Eugênio Lima para prestarem esclarecimento às autoridades.
6 days later, they let me out of jail. My mum had sent a message to the authorities in Cape Verde in English saying that I was coming, and they translated it into Portuguese via Google Translate or something, and they decided it was a tip-off and that I was a people smuggler. And they caught the Carlos the Jackal of people smuggling. So eventually that situation sorted itself out, but I ended up spending about 6 weeks in Cape Verde Islands. And then two nice guys, a German guy called Milan and a French guy called Sebastian, came over from one of the other islands in the chain on their sailing ship and sailed me back to Africa, and it was on with the show. Going around West Africa presented unique problems in terms of visas. Every country needs a visa, so it was a case of going into Sierra Leone, getting the visa for Liberia, going to Liberia, getting the visa for Cote d'Ivoire, and so on. My support team consisted of my mum and dad, and my friend Dino, my friend Lorna, and a couple of other mates, and my girlfriend at the time, Mandy. But you can see how difficult it was. I was traveling actually in the wet season. It was the worst time of year to be traveling. It was quite difficult. That was in Cameroon there. That's on the border with Chad, which is apparently spelled with a T, which is a bit odd. And then I headed down into Gabon, which is a little old French colony in West Central Africa. There I joined a Bwiti tribe where they take iboga, which is like a hallucinogenic tree bark. There's me swallowing it there. It's supposed to make you see things. It made me see these guys dance, but that was about it. After that, there was a next problem on my journey, which was how to get to Sao Tome and Principe. And this happened quite a lot in the journey. There were about 50 odd countries that I had to get to, which were all islands. And because I put down that I wouldn't fly to get to any of these places, it was hard enough getting to big tourist destinations like Barbados, trying to get to places like Sao Tome and Cape Verde, as you saw, presented its own unique challenges. But I got there in the end. Then I got to Congo, and unfortunately for me, in Congo, lightning struck again, and the police took a disliking to me. I arrived in Brazzaville, the capital, and they thought that I was a spy or something, or a journalist, I don't know. And they put me in jail for a week as well, which wasn't too pleasant. And in that jail, it was a bit more, it wasn't as good as the first one, because in the first one, at least I had the fishermen to play cards with, and in the second one, I was on my own. They'd taken my shirt and my shoes, they'd taken my glasses so I couldn't see, so that wasn't much fun. But then I headed all the way around Africa, and by the end of the year, the first year, I was hoping to have finished at the end of the year, but that was a bit ambitious, and by the end of the year, I got to 133 countries and finished in Egypt. I managed to get to all the countries in South America, the Caribbean, Central America, North America, Europe, and Africa. I just had Asia and Australia and the Pacific left to go, or so I thought. So then I headed into Iraq, that's Iraq there, making me some bread. And then I headed back into Algeria and Libya. This was when Gaddafi was still in charge. Tick them off the list. Then Georgia, Azerbaijan, and Armenia, which you can see there, that's Tbilisi there. And then over the Caspian Sea to the Stans, the 7 Stan countries, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, Afghanistan and Pakistan. I managed to get around all of those apart from Pakistan at that time. And going to Afghanistan was quite interesting because I was there for a day, got there really early in the morning, left quite late at night. I was on my own in the sort of the province of Herat, wasn't too much problems. Then I got to Iran, which was another surprise because I was expecting, you know, I'm on my own. I was thinking it would be a bit conservative and not very friendly. I couldn't be more wrong. This old lady here was a Persian grandmother who was sitting in front of me on the bus the night before. And she was talking on a mobile phone, didn't speak any English, and she gave me a phone and said, just nodded and smiled at me, so I took her phone off her and said hello. And the voice on the other end said, "Hi, my name is Saeed Hussein, I'm an English teacher here in Iran, and you're sitting behind my grandmother. And she's concerned about you because the bus gets in very early tomorrow morning at 5:30, and she's concerned that you won't get any breakfast. She wants to know if she can take you home with her so she can cook you breakfast. Would this be okay?" And I was like, yes, oh my God, yes. So that was wonderful. Anyway, so then I headed into, I went through Saudi Arabia into Eritrea, which was my last country in Africa then that I needed to get to. And all the land borders were closed, so I managed to get there on a cargo ship from Saudi Arabia, come back. I bribed the guy with dates, it was brilliant. And then I headed back to Dubai, through to Pakistan, through to India, and then over the Himalayas. You can see here, this is in Tibet. And I was very lucky with my timings. I managed to avoid the Arab Spring. I managed to avoid the closing off of the Tibet border, which they sometimes close off. I managed to get to the Great Wall of China. I went to Mongolia. And then I headed over to Korea, which presented its own problems to get to North Korea. Now, I didn't want to spend £1,000 to go to North Korea properly, so I just went to the room that straddles the border between North and South and walked around the conference table. So I've literally been 2 meters into North Korea, and that's as far as I dare go with my budget. So then I headed down into Southeast Asia, and this was coming to the end of the second year. Between the visas and the difficulty in shipping, it had taken me a year to go to the next 50 countries on my list. So here I was, near the end of the year. I've been to 184 countries. I only had 16 left to go. And I got some really bad news from home that my sister had been diagnosed with cancer, and it was serious. So I left Papua New Guinea, where I was, and I headed home to my hometown of Liverpool to be with my sister for the last few weeks of her life. Anyway, when she was in the hospice, she said to me, "Graham, don't give up. You've only got a few more countries to go. Keep going." At the time, I said, "Yeah, I'm going to do it." I didn't realise it would take me another 2 years just to get to those 16 countries, because they were very difficult to get to. Because most of them, nearly all of them, were islands. And plus, while I was away, a new country was formed, South Sudan, in the middle of Africa, which I had just come from. I had to go back to Africa to go to South Sudan. So now 201 countries on my list of countries to go to. So I headed through the Pacific. I managed to get around the Pacific on a mixture of cargo ships and cruise ships, because by this point in the journey, I'd raised a bit of publicity. I was raising money for the charity Water Aid, and people wanted to get me on board, which was fantastic. So it was good that I left this to the end of the trip, but it still took a long time. This is Tuvalu here. This is the most endangered country in the world. They reckon by 2020, the water's going to be the ground's going to be so salty that nothing's going to grow there anymore. The government of New Zealand has given everyone in Tuvalu asylum, environmental asylum. It'll be the first country to be wiped off the map, which is something that I don't think any of us here are going to be very proud about. There's some kids playing there. Anyway, so then it was up into the Marshall Islands, all the way back down to Tonga and Samoa and Fiji. This is me in Fiji at Christmas time. This is making a lovu, which is an earth oven. So you wrap up your food in leaves. You make a big Brussels sprout out of it, like this. You see? There you go. You pull it out, and this was the traditional Christmas dinner in Fiji. It was amazing. And what made this possible was the fact that, this is New Year, that I was couch surfing everywhere I went. I was staying with local people, or at least expats. And so I was getting a local knowledge of the place that I wouldn't get from necessarily the guidebooks or staying in hotels. Plus, you don't have to pay for couch surfing, so it saved me a bucket full of money. So then I headed into New Zealand, which was, my intention was to be the last country. I was intended to start in Uruguay, make a nice, beautiful sine curve around the world of me rambling about, and then finish in New Zealand. Unfortunately, by the time I got to New Zealand, I realized there was about 7 countries that I'd missed on the way there, including South Sudan. So I headed back to Australia and then tried to get to Nauru, which is the smallest nation of the United Nations in terms of population. It's only about 8,000 people live there. Then I headed up to Micronesia and to Palau, which is an amazing place. And people ask me where my favorite place is. I usually say Palau. 1, because no one's heard of it and it makes me look really clever. And 2, because it is actually a phenomenal place to go and visit, and so few of us do. That's me playing around on the cargo ships there. That's the drop ship that they use to escape if the ship's on fire. And this was the crossing of the Equator ceremony. There's the oldest man on the ship, the bosun there, dressed as King Neptune. And to placate the ancient Greek gods, I was painted red and green. I had my head shaved. I was forced to drink vile liquids. And then I was given a good hosing down by the first mate there. So I've got to stress that this whole experience was a lot of fun. It really was. And although there were some, moments where it was a bit hairy and a bit scary, I want to reiterate to everyone here that I had the most amazing time on this journey. It was 4 years of my life that I feel like I achieved something. I got to meet so many people, got to go to so many places. And one thing I learned very quickly is you can't judge people by the actions of its government. You've got to judge them by their own merits. And to actually go there and to make these places real is an amazing thing. And you guys have all got European, American, Australian, British passports. You've got an access all areas past the world. I suggest you use it.
I am now in South Sudan.
The last country, South Sudan.
The 201st and last country of the Odyssey expedition, which I've been on for the last 3 years, 10 months, and 26 days. And now it's over. I finish it in the newest country in the world. Woo! Here's to South Sudan! Woo! I am now the first person in the world to visit every country without flying. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Thank you very much.